Danny with B9 Creations, and we're a global provider of additive manufacturing solutions. Today, we're going to have a conversation with Kevin at Johnson & Johnson and Eric from B9 Creations on microscale medical devices and customized additive manufacturing technology. B9 Creations delivers high-precision, medical-grade additive manufacturing with medical equipment compliant 3D printers and a suite of engineering and biocompatible materials. As a global provider of this technology, we've become the industry leader in production speed and value, serving high-precision applications ranging from healthcare and aerospace to model making, prototyping, research, and more. We also serve customers such as the ones you see below, ranging from 3M and Medtronic to Johnson & Johnson and the National Institutes of Health. And we serve those customers, certified dealers, and strategic partners in nearly 70 countries across the globe. So without further ado, I want to give you a chance to meet our panelists. Kevin and Eric, could you each tell our group a little bit about yourselves, your role, and your company?
Yeah, sure. Hi there. Oh, there's a little feedback. So my name's Kevin. I'm an engineer in Johnson & Johnson, actually within a division in Johnson & Johnson called Cardiovascular and Specialty Solutions. My group mostly focuses on electrophysiology devices, but we've also grown to support neurovascular and ENT devices as well.
And I'm Eric Hendrickson. I'm a product manager for B9 Creations. Danny already introduced the company. My career has primarily been focused on the design engineering side of things. I was actually the lead design engineer for the B9 Core Series printer, which is what the printers that we're just going to talk about in the next few minutes are actually based off of. So I'm now product manager, and I talk to customers and help interpret customer needs into actionable items for B9 Creations.
Excellent. So a big trend in medical devices is this arc towards miniaturization and microscale. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that need and how technology and design need to keep pace. So with that, Kevin, I'd love to turn it over to you to talk more about this trend of miniaturization, your microscale printing needs, and how you've uncovered technology to fill those gaps.
Sure. So at least in our field in electrophysiology, the goal is to kind of pack as much technology into a device as possible. So the only way to do that now is miniaturization, and the smaller we get, there's a bigger need for us to have 3D printing keep up with our needs. And so early, I think it was last year, I met with the B9 team at a conference, and I was letting them know, like, hey, I have this part that's about 4 millimeters tall by 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters, and I can't get anything to print, or I can get it to print, but it doesn't resolve any features. And they asked me, hey, send us a file. So I sent them the file on the screen that you see. It's a representative of some feature sizes and of a component we use in a catheter. So there's two struts at the top that are 8 thou tall, 8 thou in diameter, sorry. And the holes in the center are 3 thou big. And so you can see all the features resolved beautifully, and it really impressed us. So, it was a no-brainer for us to get a printer in-house and try it out. But, there's been huge advancements in 3D printing. So we started with, the SLA and the FDM, but the technology has really improved lately to really allow us to print these kind of parts. And it's not just, we're gonna print one or two and it takes a day. Like, these things can come out in a couple hours, and it really speeds up our iteration process, which is huge in advanced technology, because it's our goal to prove out the feasibility of a device and or a concept. And the way to do that is just to rapidly iterate and try things out. And if we're not able to do that quickly, that could be the end of a project for us. So the B9 printer has been huge for us, just because we're able to rapidly iterate and not just large scale parts, but miniature parts like you can see on the screen.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit about other applications too, like jigs and fixtures, manufacturing aids that may not be the device itself, but you still need that precision component to deliver?
Sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of the jigs and components that we design now, we can design with 3D printing in mind. And so before it would be, we have to take into account machining capabilities and limitations. And so a lot of the features we have are internal now, and they're at the micro scale, which can now all be cleaned out with post-processing, and it works great for us. So with fixturing, for example, we have something that slides over a component and it has like these micro holes that we put little pins into. There's no way we could have gotten that made with machining, and we're able to do that with 3D printing within a day. So we're able to adjust also, like, oh, the fit isn't that great, and then we don't have to wait to send out another drawing and then wait a few days for it to be machined. We're able to just throw it on our printer if something was wrong, and then we'll get it spit out in about 3 hours. So it's really been helpful for us.
That's excellent. And I think, just another point to touch on here is how has this changed the way you think about design, both this trend of miniaturization and now that you have a variety of technologies that could actually deliver designs that weren't possible before?
Yeah, it's really changed the way we work, because now we can, a lot of the resins before weren't the best, but now we're getting more robust resins, and that's a big key also with 3D printing is the material. And so we're getting resins that are starting to act more like the materials we use, which is like a PEEK or something. So it's really robust. And so we're able to design features that we actually want when we move forward to, say, a molded part or a machine part. And so we're able to just make the exact design we want, see how components fit, and we don't really have to worry too much about cost, because we're not getting a mold made and then hoping it works, or we're not sending out to machine shop and waiting a few weeks. We're getting these parts rapidly and exactly how we want them.
That's excellent. I want to give Eric an opportunity too, just to build on that and maybe talk through some other real world application examples of where we've seen this technology deliver kind of these micro scale parts.
Yeah, for sure. You can see on the screen there, we have a few other applications listed. There's a couple different photos on the slide that you have here from some of our other customers. The one on the left is from a major medical device manufacturer. You can see the ruler there for scale, but I wish I had one to hold up. These parts are itty bitty. Features like external threads, that's an aught 80. You're down to the limits of what precision machining or traditional machining can even really achieve on some of these parts. And then I think there's a feature in one of those great parts there that's like 17 thousandths as well, which is just crazy small. To be able to hold that tolerance over your batch size is a huge deal for those types of applications. Additionally, we have a photo of the red device that's on the right-hand side of the screen. That's from microfluidics research, and we don't have a close-up photo of this, but there are channels in that part that are fully resolved and fully formed that are like 100 microns in size. So being able to achieve these ridiculously small tolerances in a repeatable fashion is actually driving innovation for companies like J&J and for the two customers that we have represented here as well.
That's great. Kevin mentioned how important that print time is in terms of your product iterations and your speed to market. Could you talk a little bit about where those time sinks can be on either end of the process, even in Microscale, the print preparation and the software, and then the post-processing, and how you need to think about that whole stream of production when you're bringing these parts out?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an entire workflow issue, right? So it's everything from the generation of the part in CAD to the laying out of the part in our CAM, to the printing, to the cleaning, to the post curing. The whole thing has to be brought into perspective, I guess, if you're going to be doing these types of things at scale. The nice thing about these micro parts is you can print a lot of them at once if you really need to, right? You can fit a lot of them on a build table and kind of consolidate your time, I guess, in terms of batch. We have other solutions that we're going to talk about later on in the presentation in terms of software that help ease the burden on the front end. And we also have devices for post-processing on the back end to make that easier and less human contact points. So yeah, I guess we focus on I guess providing value at each of those contact points. If hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have a question. It's for Kevin, but I think you can both jump in on here. They just want to understand, how do you continue into production? So you start with these additively manufactured 3D printed devices, and then where can additive work, right? In bridge production or functional testing, or when do you switch? Just what does that look like as you cross from R&D and beyond?
Right. So at least for R&D, like I said earlier, like our goal is to prove concepts and feasibility. And so you don't want to be spending all that money on a machine component or a molded part. And so we utilize 3D printing to at least rapidly iterate first and then actually prototype. And so we're able to do early studies, whether on the bench or on animals, with 3D printed components. And we're able to see how robust they are, how good our design is, does a feature need a change. And once we lock that down and we go into design freeze and we start doing, focusing more in patient, then we normally switch to like a molded part or a machine component. But right now we haven't utilized 3D printing, in humans, but I can see it going there as things get more robust and reliable. But right now, yeah, it's that shift. Once you're at design lock, then you would switch over. And so 3D printing kind of provides that bridge. So you're not just waiting for parts and hoping a design would work and then testing it. You're able to do that all within a few days.
Yeah, I would add to, we have some other customers that, go through a very similar process to what Kevin just described. And then they normally outsource the actual manufacturing of the majority of their parts. And what they're finding is their vendors are coming back to them and saying, how did you make this? And they say, well, if you want to just do it the same way I did, here's the materials, here's the device, you can go for that, and you can actually scale it up to production using the same methods as the R&D.
Excellent. So I want to switch from that conversation, and all of the things we talked about were commercial off-the-shelf technology. But sometimes you get projects that either because of resolution, material needs, et cetera, require a more custom solution. So with that, I'd love to kick it over to you, Kevin, and have you share a little bit about, a project that led you to need a custom solution and what that looked like.
Yeah, sure. So, we had a project that actually required fixturing, and the fixturing was pretty expensive. It was pretty much supposed to be made of pure Teflon, which is pricey. Some of the features were internal, so we didn't really know how to manufacture that besides 3D printing. And so we reached out to the B9 team after like a conversation with them. And they mentioned that they have this new material coming out called silicone. And one of the reasons we wanted the fixture to be Teflon is because of its bonding capabilities or the lack of bonding capabilities. So we're not able to stick to it. And so we asked them, silicone's pretty similar. The RTVs will stick to it, but a lot of the standard ones don't. So is there a way we can get a sample? And they sent one over right away. It's actually that handlebar that you see on the left side of the screen. So we were able to just do testing with our epoxies on it and to see what stuck and what was needed. And I guess that once we identified, hey, this would work for our mold, we asked them, can we actually get this material? But there was a limitation, I guess, to on the printer. It needed a stronger motor. And so, we were going back and forth, and they were willing to work with us to provide a solution. So what ended up happening is, we sent the printer and they installed the motor, sent it back, and we were able to print silicone parts right away. And it's really opened up our design space because now we can make fixturing that we can't stick to. And so we can build like molds and stuff that we could inflate something into or put something in and with our epoxies, and we don't have to worry about it sticking to a sticking to the wall. So now it actually saves a ton of money because we're not using pure Teflon, and we're able to, like I said before, iterate design. So if there's a shift in our fixture, we can always compensate and just make a new one. So it's been really great for us.
Yeah, I love that. We often say we're not in the business of asking, how do you make this part, but what do you need this to do? And then designing a technology solution around delivering that. We had another question come in while we've been in here that I think would be great for you to chime in on. When you're doing these microscale parts, how do you validate dimensions and tolerances? How do you think about that portion of it?
Right. So initially, we just see if it fits, to be honest. So it's a little bit of trial and error. And then when we start to, lock in, then we start actually putting it under like a Keyence microscope and measuring dimensions, critical dimensions. And that actually helps us too with our drawings, because then we know exactly how to dimension things, what GD&T is needed. And so we're able to print parts slightly at higher tolerances in our band, or at smaller tolerances, and we can see how those all fit together.
Excellent. I'm going to do the same thing with you here, Eric, and have you share some more examples where people had certain requirements they needed to hit and there wasn't a commercial technology available, and where that customization came in.
Yeah, so about 60% of the work we do as B9 Creations is not actually visible to most people. It's kind of this type of thing. We've had successful applications for this stuff, obviously in medical, in dental, in aerospace, in industrial, and basically any type of manufacturing industry you could kind of imagine. We have the ability to customize hardware solutions. By that I mean the printer itself. We can do the full hardware solution, like add, for Kevin's example, adding a little stronger stepper motor in the back, all the way through to, hey, I need a regulatory compliance on this device, or I can't use it for my business. So that type of thing we're very used to doing. Other processing equipment in terms of hardware, like our cleaning units and curing units, if you have special needs on those types of things, we have the ability to modify those to suit. Software solutions, this is something that we've done specific to industry before, and kind of streamline that workflow from the CAD on the front end, from the CAD all the way to the printer. Materials in terms of formulations and settings. So sometimes we have a material in the portfolio, and the application you want to print is just not quite turning out. A lot of the times those settings that we release are meant for broad use. We can wring a little bit more performance out of them in some cases if we know that we're just printing this one type of thing. So that's something that we've done before for various customers, as well as services in terms of like consulting. How do you grow your business using additive manufacturing? And I think we'll get into that a little bit deeper later on in the presentation as well.
So we had another question come in. I'm going to let you take a stab at it, Eric, and then Kevin, please feel free to jump in with your perspective as well. So since we're on the topic of materials and off the shelf and custom, and that bridge from additive to maybe more traditional manufacturing, we had a question come in that wants to know, how often is plastic adequate for end-use application? And just talk through cases where you would use plastic or maybe a custom type of material. When would you use metal or ceramics as you move from R&D towards the end part of that value stream?
Yeah, I guess it really is application dependent, right? However, what I will say is that most of the customers we talk to, we wind up, diving down into, okay, what material have you made stuff like this in the past with, and why? And it generally comes down to, somebody recommended this a while ago. Technically, I don't really need all the material properties that it's providing. I just need like 2 or 3 of those. maybe a tensile strength, maybe a flexural strength, an impact resistance, you pick your engineering term there. But what we find is that in general, we can meet a lot of those primary needs with additive manufacturing, with specifically liquid photopolymer stuff. Now, there's always going to be, instances where metal simply has to do this, or, there's a chemical compatibility component here that we are technology constrained against. So it is not a silver bullet. However, it is a new way of making things that you should definitely consider in both your R&D processes and your full-scale manufacturing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at least in my industry and with catheters, almost everything is plastic. So we work with polymers all the time. The only time we don't have a plastic tip on it or anything is a plastic part on it is when we need the conductive properties or the thermal properties of metal. So like Eric said, it really is application based. But the thing to focus on is that the materials for 3D printing are becoming just as robust as, like, say, a PBEX or a PEEK, which is like an off-the-shelf polymer that you can get that are these standards in medical device. And so once these materials start to evolve a little bit more and get a little bit closer, I think you're going to start to see these 3D printed components be used more in human use devices.
Awesome. So with all of that, we often get the question, where do I start? And I wanted to spend a little bit of time getting both your perspectives on this idea of, when do I use a service bureau? When do I bring something in-house? What process do I walk through with teams on a project by project basis to be able to figure this out? So let's start maybe with you, Eric. Can you talk through when we get a customer who's trying to figure out how to get their product to market, or an R&D team that has a new project they're working on? What process do you walk them through to understand when and where and how to adopt additive?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll go through like a couple different scenarios that we've had recently, right? So maybe we have a customer come up that says, hey, my business isn't actually big enough to justify the capital expenditure for a printer to bring that in-house quite yet. We can add value by actually printing runs of your parts for you, right? So you can actually grow and nurture your business using our production scale until it makes more sense to actually bring those things in-house. Sometimes we've had customers come to us and say, hey, I run additive at scale, or I even run traditional manufacturing at scale or whatever, but I just had a huge blip in my job queue. I don't have the capacity to keep up, just even momentarily at the moment. And you can stretch your capacity by outsourcing those parts. That's a very popular thing to do. Additive manufacturing is a great way to do that because there's no tooling costs associated, right? You can just get your part manufactured with minimal changes in most cases. Even if it's only a temporary thing, you just need one run done, right? Maybe another scenario is, I've been tasked with getting a new additive manufacturing initiative off the ground for my company. A lot of the times this tends to, it's kind of funny, but it just tends to land on one guy. They kind of look around the room and say, you're the guy in charge of making this happen. And the majority of the time, most people don't know where to start with that. If you're from a traditional manufacturing background, you have a little bit of knowledge about what you need to know, but maybe not even a clue on how you go and figure out how that looks in additive without actually buying a machine or something. So we've had people come to us and say, hey, can we do a few runs, through you and kind of get a little bit of information here. And they've been able to learn very quickly by asking key questions. And we've provided things like insight in terms of basic labor, material usage, run rates, but also diving it even a little bit deeper into like lean principles and how to make this work not only in your business, but actually drive profitability in that process as well.
Do you want to maybe address that too, Kevin, from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. Well, my group's kind of spoiled. We actually have about 9 3D printers in house, including 2 B9 printers. So, I mean, there's 4 engineers, and we're still fighting over printers. And so that's kind of like what Eric said. Like we don't have the capacity here, and then we send it out to service bureau. But for the most part, the way we've decided to bring, or we've all decided to bring 3D printers in house, just because it's so convenient. It saves time and money in the long term. So at least with us, it's like I said, like the rapid iterations, it just saves a ton of time. When you're doing animal studies and trying to get the project through. But yeah, it's been a no-brainer for our team to just bring everything in-house, just because we can control it all. And prints are done in 2 hours, so if you can have it in your hands in 3 hours after post-processing, then you don't have to wait the extra day or two, for them to ship it. But also the way we decided to bring in 3D printers is, like my example before, we asked the 3D printer company like B9, hey, can you give us a sample? We'll throw a part out there and see if they can hit it. And if they do, then we're all impressed and we bring it in.
Excellent. We had another question come in that kind of relates to this, but it's more about, again, that bridge from R&D all the way through the launch, if you will, of full-scale production of that product's life cycle. So folks just want to understand, how do you assess device robustness if you have different material properties between your 3D printed part and eventually your molded part?
Definitely, yeah. So you do have to do all the testing again when you have the molded part or the machine part. But it gives you, at least when you compare like the data sheets and you have, say, like, you're comparing tensile strength or heat deflection or whatever, you know which key features that you're looking at. And so as long as those two are similar or almost there, then you can, trust that your design is robust moving forward, and you can, go ahead with, traditional manufacturing to go to scale with that part.
Great. I'm going to let you chime in too, Eric, because a lot of times what builds the product roadmap ends up being, hey, this is what I use in my scaled production. Help me understand how to simulate this over here so that transition is seamless. Can you share a little bit about how you would answer that question about assessing robustness if your materials are different on either end of the spectrum?
Yeah, I would echo what Kevin just said, actually. There's a lot of your confidence that can be built simply by having a physical part. Generally in design, whether it's medical or industrial or whatever, your part's only going to be loaded in a few different fashions. Like it's only going to see stress, this way or in bending or one or the other. You're not probably going to have multiple forces acting on whatever part. And you can generally kind of tailor your material choice for prototyping so that specific feature lines up well with what you intend to make it with in the future. That's kind of how I would answer that one.
Excellent. So I'm going to transition here. We've had some other questions, but I'm going to save them for this part. So Eric, if you want to start and just give an overview of our additive solutions, and then people have some questions too for you, Kevin, just on what specifically material-wise, et cetera, are you leveraging out of that portfolio. So I'll let you start, Eric, and then we will transition.
Yeah, for sure. So we obviously are a 3D printer manufacturer, right? So for the medical space, specifically what we have to offer is our new B9 Core 5 Series Med XL. So this device is available in both 405 nanometer and a 385 nanometer light source. The build area is approximately 70 millimeters by 125 millimeters. It is IEC 60601-1 compliant medical device. Also, in terms of applications for this type of printer device, you can use it for anything we've just talked about, right? Design, production, end use, medical devices, anatomical modeling, even, and like surgical tools and items like that. We also have a few software offers that I'll talk about a little bit. The first one is our new FAST technology. So in summary, what this is software-enabled resolution gains. So we actually take the native resolution of the printer. I'm getting a little nerdy here, sorry. We're going to take the native resolution of the printer and increase it through software, which is a pretty awesome thing. Basically it increases the accuracy of your printed part as well as the surface finish, both. So you get your highest fidelity to your CAD model possible. We also have the ability to run third-party materials through these printers. That's unlocked using our B9 Captivate software. It's a material settings development software. It comes in 3 levels. We have a basic level that's actually free and available in our slicing software that gives you the most basic things that you would need, like an exposure and a slice thickness and stuff like that to just get you going. Most people need a little bit more than that, and that's where Captivate Pro comes in. That will actually give you, I'm trying to remember the exact number of dials that we give you, but you get a lot more ability to kind of tweak and futz with stuff and make it very specific to your application. And then we do have an enterprise level as well, where we have customers that maybe are strictly manufacturing their own materials for hopeful eventual distribution and sale, right? And they need a little bit more in terms of, hey, I want to develop this in-house. I want to test this. I also want to send it out to a group of like 10 beta testers and have them test it using your platform, and eventually maybe release this on your printer or something like that. That's all unlocked through Captivate. That software, B9 Captivate, is compatible with all of our B9 Core Series printers, not just this XL printer. We also have a whole suite of materials. Our medical materials specifically, we have BioRes medical wearable materials available in both white, which is opaque in general. That's a little bit dependent on the thickness of your part. And then a red material that's translucent as well, that you saw a part a little bit earlier in the presentation made out of. Applications for this material include medical devices, both prototyping and end use, surgical tools, anatomical models, research, wearables, all that type of stuff. The main features of the materials are the durability. It's actually a polishable material, which is pretty cool. It's we've have a couple customers that are actually dyeing the white material, so you can use it more in an end product sense, even if it's just to show, hey, this is what it's going to look like in the real color later. We've found value in that for a lot of teams. It's also sterilizable. Regulatory wise, it's ISO 10993 compliant. That means it's okay for continuous skin contact of unbroken skin for up to 30 days. We also have a couple new materials I'm going to talk about, I think for the first time, maybe even. BioRes Micro Precision. The new material is going to have the ability to print very, very small parts in terms of, we're talking the overall parts, a couple millimeters in height, and then very, very fine details. So almost kind of some of the stuff that Kevin was talking about a little bit earlier, where you have, very fine details down into the hundreds of microns in size that need to be completely formed. That's what this material is specifically formulated for. It is also an ISO 10993 compliant material. Next up is our BioRes silicone material, which we also touched on a little bit earlier. Features of that material: it is an elastomeric material. It's got all the stretch and flex and stuff that you would be used to in a silicone type material. 70 short A hardness, and really quick recovery, which is something we don't see in a lot of materials. So if you bend it, it pops back to its original shape very quickly. Regulatory wise on that one as well, ISO 10993 is pending. We'll have that to offer you soon.
Awesome. And then could you talk to a little bit about how we've taken a step towards automation or ease of use on the post-processing tools so that it's, pretty seamless to go from the printer to cleaning and curing it versus getting messy therein?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually in the photo on your presentation slide here, you can see the B9 Clean unit and the B9 Cure XL. The Clean unit was specifically designed to function with the Core Series printers, including the XL. It's got the lowest isopropyl usage of any liquid photopolymer cleaner out there specific to a printer. It basically, what you wind up doing is taking the build table out of the printer, sticking it on the lid of this device, and then hitting a button and walking away until it's done. The isopropyl drains away from the part after the allotted amount of time. So if you do set it in there and you get busy doing something else, you don't have to worry about your part staying exposed to isopropyl and potentially ruining your batch simply because you got busy and weren't able to come back in time. Also, the Cure unit on the end there, specifically made to work with our new XL printer. It has multiple different wavelength light sources in it, so it also works great for competitive printers, or if you have other liquid photopolymer printing technologies in your facility, you might be able to compact some of your post-curing stuff down to just with this one unit here. So.
Yeah, that's great. We had a question earlier about how do I make sure that my tolerances and what I think I'm printing actually is what spits out the other side. And so part of that work, true, is done on the back end, but a lot of what we try to do via software is make sure that we increase the fidelity to your CAD parts so that coming out of the gate, you're going to be within spec versus at the end of it, having to enlarge or tweak your design a lot because of the way that the resin reacts and what comes out of your printer. So that's very cool. Can you maybe just before I toss it over to Kevin to talk about what his solution is, can you talk about why we chose, based on customer input, to do a medical equipment compliant printer versus, only maybe a facility certification where we manufacture that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of it's an interesting thing why we chose to do that, right? So I think the original reason that we chose to look into medical device manufacturing was actually upon customer request, just like you said. So we had a customer that came to us and said, hey, I need this device to be at this spec. And the more we got into the relationship with that customer and building those products, the more it started to kind of make sense to us. That the landscape right now in terms of regulatory is, the end device manufacturer has to certify their entire process, essentially, right? In the future, what we think is going to happen is that's going to be broken a little bit into, you'll be able to prove medical device compliance all through your manufacturing process chain. Down to the bottom where you will have less burden at the end of the process there. So big reason that we went to getting the compliance on the device was kind of future proofing. Also, you have to go through a lot of things in terms of safety and electronics, noise and things like that are actually really, really good to have in a lab environment. So there was not much of a negative to doing it, actually.
Yeah, that's great. And, like Kevin said, sometimes it's just easier to bring it in-house. So it's not necessarily that they're having service bureaus or manufacturers do that production and they control the environment. It's no, when I bring it in, I need to make sure these pieces fit into a regulatory framework where as the bar continues to get higher, as it will, with any type of new technology, that we can rise to meet that. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, Kevin. Otherwise, if you want to address that, please feel free. And then we had some questions about, what materials are you using to produce the parts that you're talking about?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So pretty much, obviously, I'm using that silicone material. got that a little bit earlier, I guess, than most of the other people. But we're utilizing HT slate a lot, which is that, I guess, that gray material kind of to the right. That to us has been like our bread and butter. So we use that almost every day. It prints the highest resolution for us right now. So I might have to get a sample of that other bioresin that you were talking about. We also utilize yellow because it is kind of clear, and so we polish it up if we need to see inside. We print thinner walls, and we can see how like fluid is traveling through a channel and all that. And then we also use the black for like standard prints, which is also high resolution as well. So we're utilizing those 4 parts or those 4 materials for our parts for them mostly. And we actually have the cure station also, and we really like it because at least with our other printers, it takes like an hour to heat up and an hour to cure. And when we asked Eric when we got it, like, how long do we put these parts in? He's like, oh, throw it in some water for 3 minutes and it's done. So it really sped it up by another 2 hours.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And, before we had that elastomeric material, we actually had a lot of folks use silicone to make silicone parts, but just use that yellow as a sacrificial mold. So there's some creative uses to materials, whether I need to see fluid flow through it and it doesn't need to be biocompatible, or do I have an alternative to making these? So it's nice to have some flexibility in your portfolio. I'm going to switch here to kind of our wrap up. Just in terms of, whether you want to request a sample or you have questions that we didn't address here, please feel free to email us directly. These guys are great. They answer a million questions every day from people, and I'm sure they'd be happy to help out as well. If you want product demos, anything like that, please just visit our booth in the exhibit hall. And also know that if you just have a project, to Eric's point, and you're like, I'm in charge of an additive strategy and I don't know where to start, or I have a project and I'm not really sure what pairing of materials and technology will get me from R&D over that curve to answer all those questions we had about what does it look like as I'm going through functional testing and feedback, so that I know what pops off in my scaled production is exactly the type of direction I'm trying to head to in R&D. Let us know. We'll hook you up with an application expert, a technology expert, and get you where you need to go. Do you guys have any other final thoughts you want to share in the last minute here before we send everyone on their way on medical devices and how to use additive to enable it?
I guess my last one is the size of the printer. It's been really nice because since we have 9 printers, our lab space is getting limited. But I don't know the exact dimensions, but it's not that big. And something that can be so portable and then print these high resolution parts has been really valuable for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other nice part of that too, again, based on feedback, they're like, I don't want to set up a separate ventilation system. So we built that into the printer in terms of filtration. I don't want a whole separate crazy, electrical system set up. So the power supply is very simple, and it's, Kevin, you're not alone. We have a lot of people that say I need a small footprint and I need to just invest in this technology, not an entire facility around it to help it operate, because then I start to get diminishing returns in terms of what I expended to get that and how I got it up and off the ground running. I don't know if you would add any other things to that, Eric.
Yeah, just that we, designed this from the get-go to suit that type of customer, right? It's a desktop unit. In terms of size, it's a little bit bigger than a computer tower. I guess I would describe it that way. So it fits on a desk. It fits under most overhead cabinets. So it's very easy to move around. I think the overall weight of the thing is somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 pounds. So not crazy in terms of weight there. And yeah, it was made to be easy to use for anybody. I guess that's one thing we didn't really talk about, is the interface on this printer is such that you just kind of click through everything. We have uses for people who want to run it a little more production. We have a print queue feature that allows somebody that's remote to set up all your prints for the day and make a giant list, so an operator can just click through and run and then pull parts off and clean or whatnot. And there's really no thought put into, in terms of what needs to go first here. That's all done. That's all handled on the front end and stuff. So yeah, I think that's probably about it for me.
Yep. As a customer put it to us, I push a button 5 times and it prints. So the whole ease of use we try to keep throughout the workflow. Well, thanks to our panelists and thanks to everyone tuning in, and we hope to talk with you soon.